Before you listen to anything, listen to a mother trying to explain her son's actions.
Well, I did speak with Kenneth Terry's mother today. As you can imagine, she is devastated. She did not want to speak on camera, but she told me she just can't understand what happened. She said this young couple was having some marital problems, and Precious Johnson did not want Terry's family at the hospital when she delivered the baby, but she still can't comprehend that her son could be violent.
She's saying that 2 days after he emptied a gun into his wife's hospital bed, while their daughter was 1 hour old down the hall. Her name was Precious Johnson, and she was 24 years old. She joined the Navy in 2024 and did nails in Birmingham. Her mother says she knew her daughter was special the day she was born on September 11th, 2001, exactly when the second plane hit the towers. She loved to worship, was in church faithfully, and, the way her family puts it, she only wanted the best life had to offer for herself and the baby she was carrying. On the 1st of March 2026, she got that baby, a healthy little girl they named Aliyah. And this is what the coroner had to say about Precious Johnson roughly 1 hour later.
Where we have just learned the names of the victims in that deadly shooting at Baptist Health Brookwood Hospital. The Jefferson County coroner says 24-year-old Precious Alicia Janae Johnson was found dead with multiple shot wounds, and 19-year-old Kenneth William Terry Jr. The coroner says Johnson was a patient at the Women's Medical Center and Terry was a visitor. The hospital was on lockdown for hours as Homewood police investigated the shooting.
That hospital had no metal detectors because Alabama doesn't require any hospital to have them. And to this day, nobody has explained in public how a gun got up to the 5th floor of a maternity ward. So let's get into what we actually know, because this case has turned into something ugly online. And I want to be honest with you about the difference between the two. What we know is that Kenneth William Terry Jr. was 19, out of Midfield, Alabama, and he graduated from Midfield High in 2023. He cut hair on the side. Kenneth studied HVAC and got named Employee of the Month in his program, and he started working at 16 and never stopped, pulling 50 hours a week or more, according to his own family. He just finished Alabama Army National Guard training as a diesel mechanic. He had 6 sisters and 7 brothers, and was baptized at Zion Hill Baptist Church. On paper, this is a young man doing everything they tell you to do, which is exactly why what happened next broke everybody's brain. His mother said the couple was having marital problems, and that is the whole official motive, start to finish, and it never got any bigger than that. But go online and you'll get told something very different, told with total confidence by people with millions of views. You'll be told Precious looked at her husband in that recovery room and told him the baby wasn't his and that he snapped, that she drained his military money. You'll be told there was a fight 2 days before she went in. I went looking for all of it, but before I show you what I found, let's start with this story. Watch this man, because everything you need to know about how this works is already in his own face.
What I love about my wife, boy, she is making me really happy. She knows when to ignore me. Well, it makes a happy marriage.
That's Cedric Charles Anderson, a 53-year-old Navy veteran out of Riverside, California. He's filming himself on his own honeymoon, telling the camera how lucky he is, and the woman he's talking about is standing just off frame, laughing at him.
So me and my baby's on our honeymoon.
Oh, your video?
Yeah, video.
Oh!
So now, see how much fun you having, baby.
Regular shot. Hi! We're having such a good time.
We have been having a good time.
Yeah.
She got me hiking. Ooh, out here in Sedona. Us and all the folks.
Yeah, we're gonna do a lot more.
Us and all the folks. We out here hiking. We're having a ball. It's been nice.
The woman laughing behind that camera is Karen Elaine Smith, also 53, and I'm telling you who she was before I tell you what he did to her, because every article about this case leads with him. Karen came up in Harbor City, California, in a family that took faith all the way seriously. And I mean her grandparents had 16 children, and 6 of them became pastors. Her mother, Irma Sykes, taught school for 41 years. When Karen was little, she sang solos in church with the grown folks choir backing her up, and a cousin remembered it as a God-given talent. She married young, and that marriage ran 21 years and ended in 2009. It gave her 4 children, whom she homeschooled herself for 8 straight years. Somewhere in the middle of that, she figured out she was gifted with the kids everybody else found too difficult. So at the age when most people are counting down to retirement, Karen Smith went back to school, earned her degree, her credentials, and specialized in autism and learning disabilities. She gave 10 years to the San Bernardino Unified School District, starting at Cajon High and moving to North Park Elementary in 2015, teaching special education for grades 1 through 4. Her colleagues said she was in that building at 5 in the morning building lessons. Her daughter Jennifer said her mother took extreme joy in seeing them excel, and a mentor called her a bright light. She was 2 months away from finishing her master's degree. Now, let's talk about Cedric and what Karen didn't know. They met around 2013 and dated for 4 years before he ever put a ring on it, and not one of them caught it. They married on the 28th of January, 2017, then went to Sedona, and that's the video you just watched. Here's what was underneath it. Cedric Anderson had been arrested 4 separate times between 1982 and 2013 for weapons violations, domestic violence, and after all 4 of those arrests across 3 decades, what sat on his permanent record was 2 misdemeanor convictions, disturbing the peace in '92 and petty theft in 2013. In 1992, an ex-wife got an emergency protective order after he pointed a gun at her. In 2004, a girlfriend got a 3-year order and told police his exact words were that he'd kill her, like he'd kill anyone who disrespected him. In 2010, another girlfriend got an order after he showed up at her job with a gun in his waistband. He showed up at a woman's workplace with a gun 7 years before he showed up at Karen's workplace with a gun, and the only difference is that the first woman lived. Every one of those orders had expired by 2017, and Karen never filed one of her own because she never knew any of it existed. There's more, and it's all in the record. The Veterans Affairs files handed to investigators show he was diagnosed with adjustment disorder in 2014 after losing a security guard job, then got an anger management referral in 2015 and showed up to 4 sessions out of 12. That October, a VA suicide screening scored him at moderate risk, and he told them he had no plan and nobody held him or followed up. On top of that, he was broke, owing $31,400 in child support for 3 children by 2 other women, with his credit score falling from 720 in 2014 down to 520 by 2017. In January 2017, the same month he married her, he told a friend that marrying Karen was going to get him out of this hole. That's the man in the honeymoon video, and what he understood is what a lot of these men understand, which is that nobody checks on a happy husband.
We have been having a good time. She got me hiking. Ooh, out here in Sedona. Us and all the folks.
Yeah, we're gonna do a lot more.
Us and all the folks. We out here hiking. We're having a ball. It's been nice.
So look at what he was posting while it all fell apart. The day after the wedding, he's online saying he just married the most beautiful woman in the world. Hearts, photos, the whole thing. And that same day, he texted an ex to tell her she'd see he was happy now. On the 18th of February, he posted that he almost had to attack 3 coaches, but God calmed him down. And that same night, he threw Karen's phone into a wall, arguing about her cheating, which she wasn't. Then, on the 11th of March, he posted that his wife, Karen Smith Anderson, is an angel with heart emojis. Karen had already moved out 3 days before that post went up. She was at her daughter's place while this man sat on the internet calling her an angel for an audience that had no idea. The abuse started almost the minute they were married. He accused her of cheating, tore her down, and threatened her. Her family watched him change in real time and told her to get out. And about 3 weeks into living with him, she did exactly that and went to her children in Riverside and Moreno Valley. She told almost nobody. Her mother knew and her kids knew, and that was the whole list. So the school knew nothing, and her coworkers knew nothing. She thought the threats were just noise, and her family said she brushed them off as his looking for attention. I want to be careful here, because it would be very easy to turn that into Karen's fault, and it is not her fault. Playing it down is what victims do. It's one of the most documented things in all of domestic violence. And you do it because the alternative is admitting out loud that you married a man who might kill you, and almost nobody can hold that. Her mother said it better than I ever could, which is that Karen thought she had a wonderful husband, but found out he was not wonderful at all. Then came the last 2 days, and the phone and GPS records on this will turn your stomach. On the 8th and 9th of April, Cedric Anderson drove past her daughter's house in Moreno Valley 6 separate times. On the 9th, at 11:47 at night, he sent Karen the last message she'd ever get from him, telling her he still loved her. Good night. On the 10th, at 6:12 in the morning, he walked into Turner's Outdoorsman in Riverside and bought 50 rounds of .357 ammunition, and they found the receipt in his stuff. At 10:24 that morning, he signed in at the front desk of North Park Elementary School and told them he was dropping something off for his wife, and they let him through. Because why wouldn't they? He was her husband, and he was on the list. He walked into a class filled with 15 students, grades 1 through 4, all of them special needs, with 2 teacher's aides in the room and Karen Smith standing at the front of it.
In just-released video, we see the Cedric Anderson. At first, he walks by the office to try to get in a door at North Park Elementary in San Bernardino. There is no sign of a gun, no sign that he's about to go on a rampage. The door is locked, so Anderson calmly goes to the school office. Employees recognize him as a teacher's husband, so they allowed him in, and he signed in. And you can see he does not look agitated or angry. Of course, the office staff had no way to know what he was planning. After signing his name, he leaves the office and enters a hallway into the school.
Me and my baby's on our honeymoon.
Cedric Anderson and Karen Smith appear happy in a honeymoon video posted on Facebook in early February.
Oh.
But by March, the marriage was in trouble, according to San Bernardino Police Chief Jared Bergwan.
What we were told was that there was an allegation of infidelity in the relationship.
Smith moved out and was living with her adult children.
It appears that he had been making efforts to contact her and to have her come back home, and she was resistant to that. And I don't know if that just reached a boiling point.
On Monday, Anderson walked into Smith's classroom with a handgun and began striking her and 2 students before himself.
The 2 children that were struck by gunfire were simply standing and seated in the exact proximity where she was on the other side, and they appear to be errant rounds that did not strike her, that struck the children.
They asked one of the children about that later, on camera, and listen to how fast that baby answers.
Did he say anything when he came in? No. He just came in and started. That's so scary. What did all the do? Did you guys run?
No.
The weapon was a .357 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver, and he fired 10 rounds out of it, which matters more than it sounds, because a revolver like that holds 6. So somewhere in the middle of killing his wife in front of a room full of children with learning disabilities, this man stopped, opened the cylinder, reloaded, and started again. He bought that gun legally in 1998, and because a domestic violence misdemeanor isn't enough to take your guns, and he never once handed them a felony in 30 years. Karen was who he came for, and she was hit multiple times. 2 of her students were also hit by the bullets. Jonathan Martinez was 8 years old, and he had Williams syndrome, which causes developmental delays and also famously makes children unusually warm and friendly with everybody they meet. They airlifted him to Loma Linda, and he died the next day from his injuries. Nolan Brandy was 9, hit behind Karen too, and he came out of it with a broken rib and damage to his liver and kidney and went through 9 surgeries. They discharged him on the 14th of April, and his parents said he was in good spirits, and the word they kept using was surreal. Cedric Anderson never tried to run, because running was never the plan, and he shot himself in that classroom and died on that floor. Then there's what the children did.
Yes, I was scared.
What did your teacher say?
My teacher said to go outside, hurry, because that sounds like shots.
And did you guys run?
Yes, we run.
That's a teacher in the next room hearing gunfire and getting her babies out the door.
I saw across the room. I ran fast as I can.
She lost her shoe.
And I lost the shoe.
Nobody will ever understand how important it is for you to just be able to see your kid's face, especially when something like this happens.
Now the police, because they did their part right, and it still didn't matter. The calls came in at 10:27 in the morning.
Authorities say there were 15 students in the classroom at the time of the shooting. They say 2 of the children were near Smith when she was shot. One of the students from his injuries at the hospital. Police arrived on the scene within 7 minutes. They say there was no indication the gunman had a weapon when he entered the elementary school.
7 minutes, with 8 officers hitting the perimeter first and getting 15 students and 2 aides out, and roughly 150 officers coordinating before it was over. And none of it mattered, because the whole thing was finished in well under a minute, and nobody was ever going to be fast enough against a man who already had a visitor's badge and a reason to be in the building. Outside, the parents were going through their own version of it.
What happened in the school, we were just told that our kids were okay, that nobody was hurt. But I had to take my daughter's sweater off because it still had in it. And it's just so sad. It's okay, Mom.
They told that woman nobody was hurt, and her daughter came home wearing somebody else's blood. And this one is a mother trying to work out what she's supposed to say to her own child.
I don't know what to do. I don't know what to tell her. She just says that as soon as she saw the guy with the gun, she just went under the table. But she keeps telling me that, like my teacher got shot, my friend.
That afternoon, they searched his house in Riverside and found a note that talked about disrespect and needing closure. Chief Jared Bergwan called it domestic and said nothing in the background had been alarming enough on its own to see it coming.
Those closest to her said that she had mentioned that his behavior was odd and that she was concerned about his behavior and that he had made some threats towards her. He did not make a specific threat to shoot her.
They pulled his phone and his accounts and came away with roughly 1,800 text messages and 4,200 Facebook messages, and the finished file ran 2,847 pages, with no manifesto, other targets, or escape plan in any of it. Nothing but a man who decided that if he couldn't have her, that a room full of 8-year-olds was going to watch him take her. The news had him figured out inside a day.
Was a history of violence for the man accused of opening fire inside that classroom. It happened this morning at North Park Elementary in San Bernardino. Police say Cedric Anderson walked into his wife's special needs classroom and shot her to death. 2 young students standing by his wife, named Elaine Smith, were also hit. Anderson then turned the gun on himself. One of 2 students wounded, later at the hospital.
None of those pages was ever used because there was nobody left to charge. No arrest, no bail hearing, no trial, no jury, no verdict, and no sentence, and he arranged all of that on that classroom floor. His friend of many years, Michael Miller, said the truest sentence anybody said about this case, which is that Cedric fooled everybody. That on Facebook, he was this loving Christian man, but in person, he'd talk about teaching people respect with a gun. Their own pastor said Cedric was proud and always posting about his queen, and that the church had no idea the 2 of them were even separated. Hundreds came out to a vigil at Our Lady of the Assumption. The school was closed from the 11th to the 16th. Classroom B1 got moved, and fingerprinting became mandatory for visitors. The two aides in that room, Garnett and Woodard, both retired with PTSD. And the Brandy family filed a $25 million claim against the district and settled it quietly in 2020. Karen's master's degree was awarded after her death, and her daughter Jennifer walked at that same ceremony and collected it for her. 4 years of dating and nothing surfaced. The next man you're about to meet had a record you could read in 10 minutes. Now we go back to Alabama. It was Sunday, the 1st of March, 2026, at Baptist Health Brookwood Hospital's Women's Medical Center on Medical Center Drive in Homewood. On the 5th floor, in the recovery area, Precious Johnson had just delivered a healthy daughter. And Elia wasn't in the room. She was somewhere else in that building, brand new and absolutely fine. Kenneth Terry was in the room. And by every rule that the hospital had, he was standing exactly where he was supposed to be standing, because he was her husband and the baby's father. At about 9:22 at night, he shot her. The coroner wrote that Precious Johnson was a patient at the hospital when she sustained multiple gunshot wound injuries during an apparent murder-unaliving domestic assault, which is the language you'd use for weather. The radio traffic referenced in the reporting laid out the order of it, and she was shot first, and then he turned the gun on himself, right there at her bedside. At 9:25, Homewood police got a call for shots fired inside the Women's Center, and officers went in and found a woman and a man, both dead of gunshot wounds, in a maternity recovery room. At 9:29, 4 minutes after that call came in, Precious Johnson was pronounced dead where she lay, having been somebody's mother for maybe an hour.
Precious Johnson was shot multiple times. Authorities say she was a patient in the hospital. Family members say the 24-year-old had just had a baby with her husband, 19-year-old Kenneth Terry Jr. According to the coroner, Terry died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Homewood police think the hospital shooting was a domestic-related.
The hospital locked down and issued a statement saying that an incident occurred Sunday evening, that Homewood police responded immediately and secured the scene, and that out of an abundance of caution, they were in lockdown.
Now, Brookwood Medical Center released a statement last night saying, in part, quote, "There's no active threat to patients, team members, or the public. Baptist Health is cooperating fully with authorities investigating the incident."
That was true in the most useless way a sentence can be true, because the threat had already done everything it came to do and then removed itself from the building. The lockdown lifted overnight, and the hospital was running normally by Monday morning while detectives worked the 5th floor through the dark. Which leaves the security question. How did a gun get to the 5th floor of a maternity ward? Nobody knows, or rather, nobody will say. The police have released nothing on it. Alabama has no statewide rule requiring metal detectors at hospitals and no rule requiring armed guards, so every facility decides for itself, and Brookwood decided it wasn't answering questions about what it decided.
I think it's a sad, but this was an isolated incident. And I will say, in my 30 years of working at the Hospital Association and representing our hospitals in the state, this is the first time something has occurred like this.
The Alabama Hospital Association did talk, and their answer is how the whole industry decided to swallow this.
I wanted to get an idea of the security there. Less than a day after the shootings, I walked through the labor and delivery unit unchecked.
Both of those things can be completely true and still answer nothing, because an isolated incident isn't a security policy, it's a description of how long your luck held. And then there's this. If a reporter can walk into labor and delivery one day after a double shooting in that unit, while every camera in the state is pointed at the building, a regular Tuesday in there doesn't bear thinking about. The association's answer was that hospitals always do after-action reports and look at lessons learned and share best practices with each other, which is genuinely how the industry works and is also a process that produces a meeting, not a metal detector.
Howard says there are no security mandates in Alabama for hospitals here, but she says, of course, that could change, and there will be a lot to learn from this incident.
Cedric Anderson had a visitor's badge, and Kenneth Terry had a wedding ring, and neither one had to break into anything because none of these systems were ever built to stop the person who belongs there. And for the rumors about Precious, the Homewood Police Department says domestic in nature and stops there. The Jefferson County coroner says multiple gunshot wounds and a self-inflicted gunshot wound and stops there. There was no fight about the baby's paternity or anything else. And the only named person in Kenneth Terry's family who has ever spoken publicly about any of this is his mother, Lawn Krisha Brown. And she spoke to WVTM reporter Lisa Crane off camera in the days right after. In that whole conversation, she said the couple was having some marital problems, that Precious didn't want Terry's family at the hospital for the delivery, and she said she couldn't understand what happened and couldn't comprehend that her son could be violent. She never alleged cheating or that the baby wasn't his or that Precious took his money. She never said one bad word about that woman's character, past the fact that she'd been kept out of the delivery room. Though there is one documented thing here that is strange, and I won't pretend otherwise. His obituary. Poole Funeral Chapels put it out around the 11th of March for the funeral on the 14th, and it's long and loving. It lists his parents, Lawn Krisha Brown and Lamond Williams. It lists all 6 sisters and all 7 brothers, grandparents, aunts, uncles, great-aunts, god-uncles. It even names his childhood best friends one by one: Malcolm, Jimmy, Jerian, Timothy, Truman, Marquess, and Wandarius. It calls him a driven and beloved son, brother, and soldier. Precious Johnson is not in it. Not as his wife, not one time. Aliyah is not in it either, so his daughter, born the same day he died, doesn't appear anywhere in her own father's obituary, and there's no mention of the marriage or of how he died. Now that happens. Families do this in painful cases, and there's nothing improper about it. But go read the guest book, and it holds all the way through, because nobody mentions her or the baby, and he's remembered purely as a son and a brother, a soldier and a co-worker. That isn't proof of a motive, and I won't sell it to you as one, but it's the only thing on the record that points at what his side was feeling. Her family, meanwhile, said everything out loud. They started a GoFundMe, organized by Rodney and Trista Roberts out of Birmingham, to bury Precious and secure Aliyah's future, and it's raised over $13,000 for the funeral, the baby's care, and counseling to a family that had to live through this. Their words were that what should have been a place of care and safety became the place where our family's world was forever changed, and that they want Aliyah to grow up knowing that her mother was loved. Her mother, Trista, said Precious was robbed of my gift of life, and so was her daughter, but that she was blessed that she left a piece of her behind. They buried both of them the same weekend, with viewings on Friday the 13th and services on Saturday the 14th. Him at First Baptist Church, Kingston, and into Zion Memorial Gardens, her at Faith Memorial Chapel in Bessemer and into Valhalla. The case closed almost immediately because there's nobody to arrest and nobody to charge. Aliyah is with her grandparents now, and one day she'll be old enough to type her own name into a search bar, and whatever the internet has decided by then is what she's going to find waiting for her. Cedric Anderson hid what he was for 4 years, and Kenneth Terry had no record at all to hide. This next story is one you could see coming from space. Kenesha Miranda Harrison was 38, born the 25th of March 1986 in the Binghamton neighborhood of Memphis, Tennessee. She ended up in Hoffman, North Carolina, a small place out in Richmond County. And by any measure you want to use, she was winning. She was a certified nursing assistant working in local clinics and hospitals. She went back to school as a grown woman with kids and came out with a degree in business administration and healthcare management from Capella University, class of 2021, and then went and got a bail bondsman license on top of that. She bought her own house and she raised 2 daughters by herself. Around 2019 or 2020, a man slid into her Facebook messages. He was in prison at the time, serving what most accounts put at a 12-year sentence. His name was Sheldon Maurice Neely, though she wouldn't have known him by that because he was using other names, Moses and Charles, and telling her he was reformed. He was 46, and his record is public information through the North Carolina Department of Adult Correction, and it reads like a wall. In 1994, out of Moore County, he was charged with damage to property plus possession with intent to sell a Schedule II controlled substance, and when his probation got revoked in '95, that turned into about 3 years and 1 month inside. In 1997, resisting a public officer, just months after they let him out. 1998, possession with intent to sell Schedule II again, plus assault inflicting serious injury. Driving while license revoked at least 4 separate times across '99, 2000, and 2002, and one of those came 20 days before he was supposed to be released. Then, robbery with a dangerous weapon, possession of a firearm by a felon, and more Schedule II, which ran him about 2.5 more years. Then, in 2010, he was charged with assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill inflicting serious injury, plus assault with a deadly weapon inflicting serious injury. That alone got him locked up for more than a decade, and they let him out in September or November of 2022. His parole ended on the 9th of June, 2023. Nearly 30 years of violence and weapons and drugs and robbery, in and out of that system his whole adult life. And this is the man who came looking for a nurse on Facebook. What happened next is hard to watch, and I want to handle it right because it's easy to be cruel about a woman who isn't here to explain herself. They dated through the prison system, on calls and messages, and he set up FaceTime dates and reportedly sent her money to pay for them, which is its own kind of tell, a man with no income funding a courtship out of a cell. She visited him, brought her daughters along, and set him up as a father figure for 2 girls who had been doing just fine without one. She spent real money on him too, hiring the singer Shanice to record him a personalized video, booking and paying for an Atlantic City trip for when he got out, buying him gifts. Her family was against it by multiple accounts, and they told her so. And in December 2021, Kenesha Harrison married Sheldon Neely at the facility while he was still in custody and became Mrs. Neely.
I am on to see my husband. I'm happy to see my husband. I'm happy.
She posted about that man constantly, about how he was her king, her soulmate, her best friend, anniversary posts, Father's Day posts, calling him a father to her children. He came home in late 2022 and moved into her house on McCoy Drive, and he did not work. There's no public evidence of any real job after his release, so she kept paying for everything. They started trying for a baby and had a couple of miscarriages, but they kept trying and set up a registry at Target under Kenesha and Maurice Neely. She was building a whole life with a man the state had convicted of trying to kill someone. Then came the 11th of December, 2023. Richmond County deputies got called out to McCoy Drive for a domestic disturbance, and here's what Kenesha told them when they arrived. He was drunk, they argued, and he punched her in the face multiple times. Then he locked her in a bedroom, kept beating her in there, and made sure she couldn't call anybody for help. Fed up, Kenesha went and grabbed her gun. They fought over it, it went off, and the bullet caught him in the upper thigh. The reports describe it as accidental, in self-defense. Deputies rolled up and found him bleeding from his leg, and EMS took him to the hospital. Once they patched him up, they arrested him and charged him with felony second-degree kidnapping, misdemeanor assault on a female, and misdemeanor interfering with emergency communications. They held him without bond at first, because that's what happens in a domestic violence case, and set his court date for around the 21st of December, about a week before their second wedding anniversary. So the system finally had him, in a cell, charged with a felony, no bond, 30 years of violence stacked up behind him, and a court date on the calendar. And then Kenesha Harrison, who had just been beaten and locked in a room and had to shoot a man to get herself out of it, went and bailed him out. She got him out and picked him up, And by the accounts of the people who followed her online, she carried on like none of it ever happened, with no public mention of the assault, the posts continuing, the relationship continuing, and that man walking right back into that house. The system had him, and he walked out of it on money that came from the woman he'd just beaten. 8 months is what Kenesha Neely had left after she posted that bond. But before the last morning, one more thing happened in that house. Around the 23rd of June, 2024, Kenesha gave birth to a daughter named Kamori, about 10 weeks early. That's a NICU baby, which means weeks of driving up to a hospital to sit next to a plastic box. And it means a mother who works in healthcare herself and therefore knows exactly how fragile the whole thing is, doing the hardest kind of waiting there is. And Kamori made it. She got strong, and she came home in late July. On the 4th of August 2024, Kamori was about 6 weeks old. That Sunday morning, around 8:15, neighbors on McCoy Drive heard a domestic dispute, and then they heard gunshots and called the Richmond County Sheriff's Office. Deputies arrived, began to clear the house, and found a locked bedroom door. While they were standing at that door trying to get through it, they heard a single gunshot from inside. Law enforcement was already in the house and already at the door, and he was still on the other side of it with enough time left to do one more thing. They breached it and found the bodies of Sheldon Maurice Neely, 46, and Kenesha Miranda Harrison Neely, 38, both dead of apparent gunshot wounds. Sheriff Mark Gulledge's office called it a murder unaliving out of a domestic situation between the couple who lived there, released their names on the 13th of August, and said the investigation was continuing pending autopsies. The 6-week-old survived and wasn't hurt. She was in that house, and now she has no mother, and her father is the reason why. And there was no arrest and no trial, because both of them were dead when the deputies got through that door, so the file was shut, the same as Alabama and the same as San Bernardino. Kenesha's funeral held on the 13th of August at the Hoffman Recreational Complex, and she was laid to rest in the Jameson Harrison Family Cemetery over on Hart Street. The family received visitors at the house on McCoy Drive, which means people came to grieve with her in the same place where he killed her. His family buried him on the 17th, and his obituary runs a few lines. Born the 8th of September 1977, service at House of Prayer Feed My People Ministry in Hamlet, and no family listed on it at all. The North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence put her on their 2024 homicide list as one line on a spreadsheet: firearm, spouse perpetrator, spouse victim. And she's in the gun memorial database and the gun violence archive too. So put all three of them together. Cedric Anderson was 53, a Navy veteran with 4 arrests across 30 years that produced 2 misdemeanor convictions, 3 restraining orders from 3 different women, 1 for pointing a gun and 1 for showing up at a woman's job armed. He never took a felony, so the gun stayed legal. Kenneth Terry was 19 with no record at all, National Guard, Employee of the Month, 50-hour weeks, 13 siblings, baptized, nothing to find on him anywhere. Sheldon Neely was 46 with 30 years of it written down, including assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, and a felony kidnapping charge sitting open 8 months before the end. Everybody could see it, her family told her, and Kenesha Neely died in her own house behind a locked bedroom door with her 6-week-old somewhere in the building. One hid his record, one had no record, and one had a record you could read like a book, and the record predicted nothing. We keep telling women to check for red flags as though the flags were the problem, and Precious Johnson had nothing to check. What worked for all 3 of them was the opposite. Not one of them broke in. Cedric signed the log because he was the husband. Kenneth walked the ward because he was the husband, and Sheldon lived in the house because he was the husband. So every door stood open in advance, and the relationship itself is what opened it. The institutions did what they could. a 7-minute police response in San Bernardino that didn't matter because it was over in seconds. Deputies with their hands on the bedroom door in Hoffman who still heard that last shot come through it. And a hospital in Alabama with no metal detectors, no state mandate, and a reporter walking that same unit unchecked the very next day. And the paperwork at the end of all three says the same things: domestic in nature, isolated incident, apparent murder, unliving. And there's one good thing in all of it, which is the Karen Smith Law, AB 2877. It failed in 2018, and people dragged it back and got it passed in 2022. And what it does is flag restraining orders in school visitor logs so that the next Cedric Anderson who walks up to a front desk smiling with a story about dropping something off for his wife runs into a system that already knows exactly who he is. It took 5 years, a dead teacher, and a dead 8-year-old to make a computer check a name.
Like that ain't fat as fuck. Like, what? Do y'all see this? I'm gonna order every color.
First, you hear the screams. Then moments later, you see the first responders. They're heading 2 doors down to this home, where 27-year-old Lyric Backus and her 7-year-old son Deuce were found dead in the garage.
On February 9th of 2024, a famous rapper's wife and 7-year-old son would be found dead in their home garage. On what should have been a day of celebration for a famous rapper's wife, it was instead a horrifying scene. At around 4 p.m., surveillance footage would capture both mother and son driving into their home, but suddenly, they would not be heard from again. By nightfall, frantic relatives begged the police for a welfare check. When officers stepped into the home garage, what they found was devastating. Both the mother and her 7-year-old son were lifeless inside the car. At first, it seemed like a tragic accident, but as investigators dug deeper, unsettling questions emerged. Why had the car been left running? Why did this happen on her birthday? And most haunting of all, could the secret she had kept for 7 years have played a role in her and her son's deaths? Sadly, this isn't the first time we've had to tell a story like this. Think back to the case of a popular hairstylist and her son, who were ambushed and shot dead over a $2,000 debt.
People found dead near a park. One of those victims, a young child.
That car's riddled with bullets. Somebody got into this car with multiple people inside, a child.
If you haven't seen it yet, I strongly encourage you to watch. The parallels are chilling. I'll leave the link at the end of this video. Now, let's look at the life and tragic deaths of Lyric Backus and her 7-year-old son.
So, I'm making this video for everybody that's asking me about the stretch of the future jeans. This is a small that I have.
28-year-old Lyric Backus was born on February 9, 1996 in Texas. By her late 20s, she had already carved out a name for herself as a businesswoman, influencer, and single mother, determined to defy the odds. Raised in a modest family, Lyric learned early what it meant to work hard. Friends described her as ambitious and independent, someone who refused to let circumstances dictate her future. She didn't grow up with wealth or privilege, but what she lacked in resources, she made up for with hustle. Her boutique, Lyric's Closet, started small but quickly exploded into a recognizable brand. Her followers admired not just her fashion sense, but the way she marketed herself. Clever, real, and consistent. Lyric often styled her pieces herself, pairing bold outfits with down-to-earth captions that made her feel relatable. Orders poured in not just from Dallas, but from across the country. From New York to California, women were wearing her looks, tagging her in photos, and fueling her growing online empire. But business was just one part of her story. At the heart of her world was her son.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Deuce. Happy birthday to you. Yay!
7-year-old Deuce, born in 2016. Friends recalled how she lit up when talking about him. always working to give him the kind of life she didn't have growing up. Deuce wasn't just her child, he was her inspiration, her brand ambassador, and the reason behind every late night of packaging and every risk she took as an entrepreneur. On social media, their bond was obvious. Her followers saw Deuce in matching outfits with his mom running around the boutique or simply smiling beside her. He was magnetic, bright-eyed, funny, and full of life. In many ways, Lyric's brand wasn't just about clothing, it was about family, resilience, and love. Yet, there was one part of her life she kept tightly guarded: Deuce's father. In Seagoville, a town of fewer than 16,000 people noticed things. Lyric never showed up with a partner at school events. There were no father figures in her holiday photos. For 7 years, she never once publicly acknowledged who Deuce's father was, despite endless speculation. And soon, the secrecy became a talking point in Dallas's social circles. Whispers in salons and barbershops hinted at a powerful figure in the music industry. A man with money, influence, someone with millions of followers, chart-topping hits, and everything to lose if certain truths ever came to light. This wasn't just any musician either. This was a figure who commanded respect in the hip-hop community, sold out venues, and collaborated with major artists. The kind of person whose image was worth protecting at all costs. And for 7 years, Lyric played by the rules. No public acknowledgments, no family photos, no father-son moments shared with the world. She built her empire, raised her son, and kept silent about the one thing everyone wanted to know. Some insiders claimed the resemblance between Deuce and this individual were undeniable, while others believed Lyric's silence was her way of protecting her son. Whatever the case, she remained unshakably private, never confirming or denying the rumors. Still, Lyric was determined to succeed. She had transformed from a young single mother with big dreams into one of the most admired boutique owners in Dallas's online fashion scene. Lyric's Closet wasn't just another store. It was a brand that empowered women to feel beautiful and confident without spending a fortune. Customers trusted her because she was authentic. She didn't pretend to be perfect. She let her followers see the struggles of balancing motherhood and business, and they loved her for it. But her reach extended beyond her boutique. She was becoming a known face in the influencer community, collaborating with local photographers and other entrepreneurs. Her story inspired countless women, especially other single mothers, who saw in her proof that it was possible to rise above circumstances and create stability on your own terms. To her neighbors in Seagoville, she was more than an entrepreneur. She was the young woman who had turned ambition into action, a mother who worked tirelessly for her child, and someone who carried herself with pride despite the whispers and questions. But as Lyric's star rose, so did the risks of living with her secrets. In small towns, whispers rarely fade, and sometimes the same determination that drives success can also draw dangerous attention. February 9th, 2024 marked what should have been a joyous occasion: Lyric's 28th birthday. Her business was thriving, her son was healthy and happy, and she had built the kind of life most people only dreamt about. She shared her excitement online, posting glamorous selfies and celebratory birthday captions. Hundreds of comments poured in from followers wishing her well. But what no one knew was that this birthday would be her last. For 7 years, Lyric had carried a secret, protecting a man who refused to acknowledge her publicly and keeping silent about the truth that weighed heavily on her. Friends later revealed that her 28th birthday had become more than just a celebration. It had become a breaking point. After years of shielding someone else's reputation, Lyric had apparently reached her limit. Those close to her said she had begun talking about setting the record straight, about finally telling the truth. Some even claimed she had started drafting text messages, that could expose everything she had been hiding for 7 long years. And while the day began like any other, filled with smiles and birthday wishes, it would soon unravel into something far darker. One that would ensure Lyric and little Deuce would never see another sunrise. That morning, she dropped Deuce at school, ran errands, and later picked him up. Security footage from a local gas station showed the pair around 3:15 p.m. Lyric filling the car, Deuce grabbing snacks. They looked happy, completely unaware that these would be their last moments of joy. By 4 p.m., they returned home. But hours later, Lyric's best friend Jessica grew concerned when Lyric stopped answering messages and missed planned birthday dinner reservations. Lyric never missed important calls. She never went silent on her birthday. She never left people wondering where she was. For a woman whose entire business depended on staying connected, that should have been the first red flag. Her phone was her lifeline. Clients reached her through it, followers engaged with her daily, and every sale from Lyric Closet came through her constant presence online. So when hours passed without a single reply, without her usual stream of posts, friends and family immediately knew something was wrong. Messages went unread, calls rang endlessly, and her once active social media suddenly fell quiet. For Lyric, silence wasn't just unusual, it was unthinkable. And that silence would soon signal the beginning of a nightmare no one could have imagined. But by 11:47 p.m., fear overcame hesitation. Jessica called the police for a welfare check. When officers entered the home, they found signs of a normal life, such as dishes in the sink. Nothing seemed amiss until they reached the garage. And what investigators discovered next would send chills down their spines. Behind the locked interior door, they heard the faint hum of an engine. Forcing it open, they were hit with thick, toxic air. Inside the car sat Lyric in the driver's seat, her head tilted back as if asleep. Beside her, Deuce was still strapped into his seatbelt. Neither was breathing. The engine was still running. To those officers, the scene was haunting. Peaceful at first, but deathly quiet.
This is just a very sad situation. The neighbors tell me that the mother and son were found dead in the garage of this home. You can see where someone's come and placed flowers out front. And tonight, investigators are working to learn exactly what happened.
First, you hear the screams. Then moments later, you see the first responders. They're heading 2 doors down to this home, where 27-year-old Lyric Backus and her 7-year-old son Deuce were found dead in the garage.
Soon after, the Seagoville Police Department released a preliminary statement. This was believed to be a tragic accident caused by carbon monoxide poisoning.
Believed at this point that it is a carbon monoxide overexposure. The investigation is ongoing, but there's no signs of foul play at this time.
The car had been left running in the closed garage, silently filling the space with deadly fumes. Investigators explained how carbon monoxide, often called the silent killer, is colorless, odorless, and virtually undetectable without proper alarms. Within minutes, it can cause dizziness and confusion, and prolonged exposure leads to unconsciousness and death. Neighbors were shaken by the news, many saying they hadn't noticed anything unusual until emergency vehicles swarmed the home. To them, it seemed unimaginable that something so ordinary could lead to such devastating consequences.
It was just mayhem. Everybody out here crying, screaming. The cops was out here that taped it off. I was concerned about the little boy, like, is he at school? Like, 'cause I know him and my daughter go to school right here. Where the little boy at? I was like, oh, once I heard he was gone, that's what it hit me the most. I was like, wow, like, he was just out here playing with my son.
But then, details didn't quite add up. No one could explain why Lyric and Deuce had been sitting in the garage for so long. Lyric was known for being careful, especially with her son. Why would she leave the engine running with the garage door closed? And why, of all days, would it happen on her birthday? Authorities claimed it was an accident, but the secrecy surrounding the case fueled speculation. Autopsy results and toxicology reports weren't released publicly. No surveillance footage of their final movements was made available. Neighbors claimed they hadn't noticed the sound of an engine running for hours. It was only after examining the evidence that the horrifying truth emerged. While there were no signs of forced entry or struggle, the locked garage and still running car left open the possibility of foul play. But then, one troubling fact emerged. Death from carbon monoxide poisoning doesn't happen instantly. Experts say it usually takes 15 to 30 minutes in an enclosed garage. Victims experience dizziness, nausea, and confusion before slipping unconscious. If Lyric and Deuce had been trapped for that long, why were there no signs of attempted escape? Detectives confirmed that Lyric's phone was still charging inside the kitchen. So why hadn't she used it to call for help? Why hadn't Deuce, a bright and talkative first grader, tried to get out of the car? As detectives pieced together the timeline, the inconsistencies grew. The last confirmed sighting of Lyric and Deuce was around 4 p.m. when they arrived home. By evening, she missed dinner plans and stopped answering texts. Police didn't find their bodies until close to midnight. That left nearly 8 hours unaccounted for. And eventually, one theory began to spread. Had someone staged the scene to look like an accident? Family members, too, struggled to accept the accident explanation. To them, Lyric was too careful, too protective of Deuce. The lack of transparency deepened suspicions. If this was truly an accident, why did silence surround the man believed to be Deuce's father? When the community gathered to mourn, his absence was glaring. No statements, no condolences, no acknowledgement. Meanwhile, across town, another piece of the puzzle was falling into place. Friends noticed that funeral costs had been quietly covered by someone with money and influence, yet that same person never stepped forward publicly. For many, this was the final confirmation that power and silence were protecting someone. For others, it deepened suspicions that Lyric's death wasn't a simple accident, but rather a tragedy shaped by secrets too dangerous to expose. Soon enough, the story took on a life of its own, online. Supporters demanded transparency while skeptics argued it was nothing more than a heartbreaking accident. But in Seagoville, where Lyric's boutique and Deuce's school were local fixtures, people refused to let it go. Lyric's family, devastated beyond words, began to push for answers. Her friends shared stories of how she was planning to expand her boutique, talking about future vacations with Deuce, and celebrating the stability she had worked so hard to build. The more the community asked, the more they were met with closed doors. Why did police insist on wrapping the case up so quickly? And most of all, who truly benefited from calling this an accident and moving on? Not only that, but whispers of a hidden insurance policy began to surface. Was this really a tragic oversight, or something more deliberate? On Saturday, February 24th, 2024, at 11 a.m., the Eternal Rest Funeral Home opened its doors for one of the most heartbreaking services Seagoville had ever seen. Side by side, two caskets, one small, one larger, were placed at the front of the chapel. The sight of mother and son together in death silenced the room before the service even began. As mourners filled the chapel, the absence was obvious. The man many believed was Deuce's father did not attend. Not a word, not a statement, not even a public condolence. While hundreds gathered to honor Lyric and her little boy, his silence hung over the service like a heavy cloud. Lyric, Bacchus, and her son Deuce were buried together, just as they had been found. The official word called it an accident, but to her family, friends, and thousands of supporters, something about this tragedy felt deeply wrong. Soon enough, vigils were held outside Lyric's home. Families lit candles, shared stories, and turned their pain into education. They organized free carbon monoxide detector drives, determined to prevent other tragedies. Neighbors pledged to check in on one another more often. And eventually, Lyric and Deuce's deaths became more than just a tragedy. They became a rallying cry. Many believe that the secrecy wasn't just about a tragic accident, it was about protection. Protection of reputations, protection of finances, and protection of legacies that had no room for inconvenient truths. Lyric, Bacchus, and her son Deuce should still be here today. A mother with a booming business, a first grader with a future full of dreams. Instead, their story has become a chilling reminder of how quickly life can change and how silence can speak louder than words. What do you think? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.